There's going to be a lot of folks now that are murmuring, saying, well, is he going to be there long term? Is Billy Napier really the guy at Florida? And those murmurs have already been rumbling for a while now. I think we'll start to see them get a little bit more volume. But I want to tell you my thoughts on this whole Billy Napier situation and his job security at Florida. And I'm in the minority here, and I'm totally fine with that. I think Billy Napier will be the head coach at Florida beyond just this season. I think we'll come back to SEC Media Days next year in Atlanta, and we'll say, yep, Billy Napier, head coach at Florida. How you doing? And I feel that way for a couple of reasons. The first is the product on the field. Like, that's what this all comes down to, right? Like, if you're not winning football games, then this point doesn't matter at all. Like, my whole prediction here, my whole thought around him being the head coach at Florida past this season is built on the thought that I think they're going to be a bowl game team. Not just a bowl game team. I think they will look good in the games they need to look good in. I think the eye test, they will pass it. They will be competitive against the teams that have to be competitive against, the Miamis, the Florida States, and things of that nature. So that's the first part of this. The big reason why I feel that way is you look at this, the schedule, man. I don't see a game outside of Georgia and Texas. Let that sink in for a second. They have to play both Georgia and Texas. I move on. Outside of Georgia and Texas, I don't see a game with Florida where I say, yeah, man, they have no chance of winning. I'm not telling you they'd be favored, but I don't see many games on the schedule, again, outside of playing against Georgia and at Texas, that they're going to be double-digit underdogs to. The Tennessee game, yeah, Tennessee, I think they're going to be really good this year. They're playing a freshman quarterback. I think Nico's a stud. They get him in October, so how far along is Nico at that point remains to be seen. Miami, going to be really good. They get him first game of the year in the Swamp. We all understand now, playing in the Swamp is very different than playing anywhere else in college football. You kind of got to throw a little bit of a who knows what's going to happen variable into that thing. LSU, same deal. You play them in the Swamp. Also, has LSU fixed their issues on defense? I don't know. I don't think LSU fans even know until we get to see them play. Ole Miss, they probably are in that conversation for being a college football playoff team. They get them in the Swamp. Same thing. Florida State, I think Florida State's going to be great. However, they bring back not that much from last year's squad. DJU, who is he? I like DJU, but they are 83rd in returning production in all of college football. What do they look like? So I think the product in itself will warrant keeping Billy Napier for another season, but let's look at this a little bit further. I think that Florida will have some pieces to score on people. Now, defense has got to hold up their end of the bargain. They're better on that side of the football as well. The offensive line is a massive hinge point. But looking at the skill positions, what do we always say? Hey, you got a quarterback, you got a chance. Florida has a quarterback. Is Graham Mertz going to win the Heisman? I don't know if I'd go that far, but I think he's pretty good. I think he's good enough to get it done for you in the games that you need to have something serviceable at quarterback. The weapons they got for him: Elijah Badger, Shamir Dike from Wisconsin, a guy who Graham Mertz has a lot of chemistry with, to go with who I think, I've said this many times, one of the best playmakers in college football in Trey Wilson. Like, they're going to have some pieces. Montrell Johnson, they're going to have a presence on the ground. So if the name of the game for Florida is keeping pace, I'm not saying they're going to score 40 a game, but I think they have the ingredients to do that in a lot of these key games and a lot of these key spots, especially at home. Now, logically, does it really make sense to move on from Billy Napier after this season if you don't see something that's overwhelmingly encouraging, like 8-4? Like, let's say for example, in this situation, Florida goes 6-6. With what Billy Napier inherited and with the schedule they have, and with the current climate of college football and the current climate of the SEC, rather, do you know without a shadow of a doubt he's not the guy for you? Because I think it's been well documented. The job that he took over out there in Gainesville was not a ready-made situation. Okay, go out on the field and win some ball games. Now, the cupboard wasn't bare. You still had Anthony Richardson. You still had some key pieces on defense, but having key pieces and having a roster to go compete in the SEC are two very, very different things. And so when I look at Billy Napier and his time at Florida, I think now in year 3, yes, it's a show-me-something year. But then you also have to look at the fact of how difficult that schedule is. It is also, I think, 6-6 has to be graded on a curve. And when I say graded on a curve, all the folks in our college audience know what I'm talking about. Like, you and I have walked into a fair amount of our classes and walked into that final and just been like, man, it's going to be a long summer. It's going to be a long summer because I don't have to study to come back to this class because I'm probably going to fail. Right now, I got a D in the class. However, you take the final, walk out of the final, you don't feel any better because you felt like you flunked the final. You check your website for wherever you get your grades at, and you say, oh, actually, they curved that final. They curved the grade that would have been a D- all the way up to a C+. Let's go. I think you have to use that same logic if you're a Florida fan for Billy Napier in the schedule. Because 6-6 against this schedule with the ridiculous November that they have on deck here, that's good enough to be 8-4, dare I say 9-3 in some other conferences. Now, I'm not making excuses or carrying water. I'm just telling you the facts. If they go 6-6 with this schedule, with Georgia, with Texas, with the game against Florida State to finish the season, you start with Miami. Like there is a lot of meat on this schedule that is going to be difficult to digest if you're a Florida fan. All right. Ole Miss is a college football playoff team. Like I look at the schedule, man, I could see very easily 6 to 7 college football playoff teams on the docket for Florida. And so again, I'm not trying to make excuses, but I do think you have to use a little bit of a different lens when you grade Billy Napier this season because of how difficult that schedule is. So I think the response you get from Florida fans though is, okay, well, who cares? Who cares? Like we can be more than fine and still find a way to be good if we are able to hire the right guy. We can hit the reset button and hire the right guy. It's no problem for us. No problem. We can find the right guy, use the portal, we'll be good. Are we sure we want to go that route? Are we sure we want to hit the reset button on this roster? Because I don't have any intel here as to what would happen with who would leave, who would stay, and all that. But I do think if we're using common sense here, everybody on this roster has committed to playing for Billy Napier. And in the day and age of player mobility, you understand now, if you change the person these guys committed to, they might be looking somewhere else. DJ Lagway was a massive get for them in that previous cycle. Do you really want to risk losing him as well as some other talent you have within that roster? Just my own 2 cents. You would hit the reset on this roster, I believe, and I think also you would hit the reset and look to the next season and say, okay, what do we really expect going forward? Do you really want to hit the reset and say we're building again for another year, 2 years? I don't think so. I don't think anybody really wants to do that. So that's the product, the logic. The last piece of this here, when I look at Billy Napier and why I think he's going to be okay long term, I think the intel is interesting when you talk to people close to Florida. When coaches are on the hot seat or feeling pressure or the end is near, for lack of a less morbid phrase, there are signs. Like you hear things around how the coach is operating. You hear things around how the team is responding to the coach. Like there's a lot of things that just you, quite frankly, as much as you want to, you can't keep from getting out internally within that locker room and from that coaching staff. Now, people are saying things about Florida, and that's nothing new, but like we're not seeing the signs that we would see that would be concerning. We're not hearing the things that we would hear that would be concerning. All that's to say is, from what I understand, Billy Napier isn't operating like a coach that feels the pressure of him being on the hot seat. From what I understand, he's a coach that is operating in a way to where he believes he will have passed this year. And if Billy Napier believes that, I mean, if anybody's going to know they're on the hot seat, you would think it would be the guy that's on the hot seat. So from an intel perspective, from a logic perspective, you don't want to hit the reset for another 2 years. From a product of what they have that they, I think, will be this season, winning 6+ ball games with that ridiculous schedule, grading on a curve. I think Florida will keep Billy Napier throughout this season, moving on to next season. Hey, y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.